Hi, everybody. This is the Presumption Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Sara Azari, joined by Jim Griffin, sorry.
Hey, good afternoon, Sara, Matt.
And Matt, our lovely producer. And we're joined today. We are joined today by Johnny Hartley. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I just got to know him. He's wild. He's fun. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. Jim has obviously known him for many, many years. But Johnny is supposed to stay in touch with me because he wants to come to Hollywood. Anyway, Johnny Wayne Hartley is a professional polygraph examiner, born, this is in his own words, born a country boy, but is now officially citified. The seventh of a small family of 10 children, he spent his earlier years growing up on a farm, hence country boy. And in the seventh grade, his family moved to the city where he was citified. Johnny attended Clemson University and graduated in 1974 with a major in political science and a minor in psychology with the hopes of going to law school. Aren't you glad you didn't do that, Johnny? Yes. While at Clemson, he started working for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, as a phone boy on holiday, spring break, and during the summer. After graduating, he was persuaded to go to polygraph school in New York City and become the youngest polygraph examiner at the time. He then attended and graduated from the FBI Advanced Polygraph School at Quantico, Virginia. In addition, he's participated in data gathering for Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Science Department, where they used information from real polygraph exams to develop algorithms to score polygraph charts conducted on computers. After 27 years of service with SLED, Johnny is now retired and now the sole proprietor of polygraph exams in Columbia, South Carolina. He's based primarily in the Southeast, but works on cases and test clients all around the world. He's assisted on every type of scenario imaginable. Oh, wow, this is going to be interesting. On both sides, law enforcement, criminal defense, private and public. His cases have ranged from low-level, low-incident local cases to high-profile cases that gain national publicity. He says with near certainty that he probably has administered and reviewed more polygraph examinations than anybody ever because he's been actively conducting them for 48 years. So welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
now when Johnny says around the world, he's not lying, because I'm not going to say where I sent Johnny, but he was on a Delta One seat for over 24 hours, I believe, on one of my cases. Is that right, Johnny?
Well, I know what case.
Yeah.
So, I was talking to Johnny last night. He actually stays up later than you, Jim. I call him Cinderella. He was up till like 11:45. He's like, "Oh, can you talk at 8:45 your time?" I was like, "Sure." That's like 11:45 your time, but okay. And anyway, we were just talking about how people have heard obviously about lie detectors and polygraphs and this thing that catches people in lies, and it's not admissible evidence, but it's got some sort of value in some cases. And I just think that what people don't at all understand, because I guess it's not, we don't see it in a trial to see it on TV, is from beginning to end. What is this? What is this? What is the equipment? What are the steps that somebody like Johnny takes? So Johnny, if Jim calls you, I'm his client, and wants me to take a polygraph for some reason that he's worked out with the prosecutor or whatnot. And you come to Jim, can you do it in Jim's office, for example, if I went there?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So if I went to Jim's office and you show up to do this polygraph on me, walk us through everything that happens in this testing, and also what happens before, during, and after.
Okay. So when I'm first contacted by an attorney or whoever's requesting in the polygraph exam, one thing I liked, we set up the date and time and the place, and I prefer to do it in the attorney's offices because the client feels more comfortable, because everything I do for attorneys is client privileged. And I always tell them it's more client privileged than talking with your attorney, because the attorneys have the authority to talk with other people on behalf of their clients, like call me, give me information. And I can't talk with anyone unless the attorney or the client tells me to. So I do prefer to do it in the attorney's office. So when they call up and want to schedule the exam, they tell me just like maybe in a sentence or two what the case is about, whether it's a murder case, a sex case, a drug case, or fraud case, or whatever. What I prefer to have is I like to get as much information as I can, such as arrest warrants, incident reports, statements, things like that, because with that, it gives me an idea of what the game is about and who the players are, instead of me going in blindly and talking with the examinee and having to get that information from them. So I have a lot more knowledge when I get in and know kind of the area that we want to go toward. So if an attorney calls me up and say, hey, here's the questions that I want to ask about my client. Okay. I'll listen. I'll receive the questions or whatever. And I'll always tell them, says, okay, well, we don't really know what the questions are going to be exactly until I actually talk with the client to see what they understand about the questions. Because no two human brains are the same, obviously. And whatever's a good question for whatever's a good question for you, Sarah or Jim or Matt, might not be a good question for me about that same issue, simply because no two human brains are the same and we don't understand the thing. For instance, if I worked with you, Sarah, and I said, hey, I need to run some errands. Can you do this for me while I'm gone? And you say, yeah, I'll take care of it. And I come back and I say, Sarah, why didn't you do what I asked you to do? And you say, I did. I said, no, you didn't, girl. And you said, whoa, wait a minute, Johnny. I thought you meant. So what you thought I meant is not the same thing I thought I would meant when I was telling you.
It's a matter of perception, different perceptions.
So basically, we had a failure to understand the communication between us. With the polygraph, with the questions, we absolutely cannot have a failure to understand the communication between us as to what those questions mean. Okay. Having said that, the questions are the most important part of any polygraph exam. If you ask the wrong questions, you could get the wrong results. Okay. And
yeah, I mean, Johnny, you're so right about that. And I guess people don't quite understand. If you give some examples, I mean, oftentimes you'll have a pre-interview, like for law enforcement, you'll have a pre-interview before the test. And one of the things that you don't want to ask is, was everything you just told me true? I mean, that's one that everybody would fail, right?
Absolutely. And so with the testing techniques, the most popular single issue testing technique is called a zone of comparison or a bizone. So if it's a zone of comparison, there's basically 3 relevant questions and 3 comparison or control questions. But with a bizone, there are only 2 relevant questions and 3 control questions or comparison questions. With the third question in the zone of comparisons, a lot of times they will put down, just like Jim just said, did you lie to any part of your statement that you gave the law enforcement or something like that? Well, there could be something that you just did not remember, and then you just lied. And
what about, Johnny, what about lying by omission?
You can do that too. So,
well, no, like okay. And hold on. Speaking of the questions, very important. I'm not articulating my question really well. If that the law enforcement questions, like if you did the pre-interview, like Jim said, but he was asked something and he didn't affirmatively lie about it, but he just changed the topic and didn't answer it,
then that's on the examiner. The examiner has to pick up on that, have their experience to know, hey, let's get back to what we're doing. We're focusing on this single issue. It's super hard to and not as accurate if you test on more issues, because the way the polygraph works, especially the computerized polygraph with the algorithms, it scores the whole examination as one totality. So you don't get like, okay, you passed this question at R5, but you didn't, but you failed at R7. Okay, that's not the way it works. Because let's say, and when I say R, that means relevant questions. And basically, with the Bizone, you ask those two relevant questions. They are bracketed by the control questions. So let's say if you numbered your chart 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we have other numbers in front of them like C4, C6, C9 means comparison. But so you bracket the relevant questions by that. But both of the relevant questions are related to the same issue. They're basically the same question asked a different way. For example, I just got through doing a test today on an armed robbery with assault, and the
for who? For like prosecution or defense or
defense.
Okay.
So the examinee was accused of helping steal this young lady's car, but she also said they pistol whipped her and hit her in the head. Okay. Well, and they took her car. All right. So they called him, but he said he never hit her with the pistol. And so when I went to talk with him, I tried to explain to him. So we wanted to find out whether or not there was any conspiracy to rob her because they took her purse and everything like that. And the main thing was whether or not he actually hit her with the weapon. And so I couldn't just ask him because he did admit that they did plan on stealing the car. It was just spur of the moment thing. So, hey, let's go take that car. Okay. So with the question, I could not ask, did you plan to rob her? Because they did rob the car. Steal the car. So I would have to ask something like that. Did you hit, and the victim's name, did you hit Jane Doe with a pistol when you helped steal her car? Because if I just said, did you plan with someone to rob, if the thing about, oh, well, yeah, we did. We planned to steal the car. Then he's going to fail that test.
Yeah. So, Johnny, how about the relevant questions are the questions that you're testing on, whether they're lying or not. Now, controlled or comparison questions, those are questions that you know that the examinee is going to react to, and so don't you? So that's how. Can you explain that? What the purpose of the comparison or the control questions are?
Absolutely. So let me tell you about all the questions. So basically, there's 9 questions, and they're spaced when you ask them about 25 seconds apart with the computerized program, because the computer needs between 20 and 25 seconds to collect the data after you ask the question. And it, accumulates all of it for how many of the charts you run. So basically, you run a minimum of 2 charts for the polygraph to the software to work to score it, and anywhere up to maybe 4 exams. So basically, you could ask anywhere from 18 to 36 questions. Okay. So like the first question would be something like, are you now sitting down? Okay. Second question would be like, do you intend to answer each question truthfully about robbing the TD Bank in Lexington, South Carolina, for instance? So that second question is what we call a sacrifice relevant question. You're there to take a test on whether or not you robbed the bank. All right. I'm asking you a question about robbing the bank, but it doesn't count as far as the scoring. It's the second question in the process. And we're sacrificing that. So if you react to that, that's okay. It doesn't count, because the question is, do you intend to answer each question true? I'm not asking you if you did it or didn't do it. Okay. So we don't count that. That's also kind of like what Jim was mentioned earlier. Did you lie to any part of your statement? Those are kind of the same kind of thing. So if you react to it, that's fine. But then the next question be outside issue question, like, is there anything else you're afraid I'll ask you a question about? So after I explain everything and go over the issue and we come up with the question, I don't have the questions typed into the test template before I meet the client. like I said, I don't know what the question's going to be or how it's going to be worded until I meet them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So you
Yeah.
get the documents, the discovery, and you review all that, and you sort of have an idea of, well, you talk to the lawyer, you know what they need, and then you formulate the questions when the client gets there, because why?
Well, I formulate because almost always the examinee, which is my client as far as a polygraph, tells me stuff that they do not tell their attorney. Almost always. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm doing fact finding. I'm trying to minimize the situation by trying to find something that can help the attorney to minimize the accusation or the crime or whatever.
Right.
So
next time Jim and I have a client where, we have those come to Jesus moments with our clients, but sometimes it takes a long time to get there. So we just send them to you. There's another purpose for a polygraph. It's to sort of get to the bottom of stuff for us. That's good to know.
Well, sometimes I have been referred to as the priest.
Yeah, right.
Actually, the sheriff in Augusta, Georgia, at Richmond County, he calls me the priest because I'm trying to get people to pass the polygraph so they can get a job there, and not very good luck.
I'd like to ask a question really about the hardware that you're working with, if I may.
Yes.
You mentioned computers and algorithms. I'm just curious, how has the polygraph technology changed over, you said you've been doing this for 40 years. Were computers kind of always a part of this process? Is this still that stereotypical image? I'll put it up right now, where it's just like a guy sitting across from somebody with some straps and wires, or am I just like thinking about this like it's the 1980s and we are doing all kinds of crazy shit now where you don't even need wires? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are we dealing with here? Why is there an algorithm?
Hey, I love the 80s. Don't rag on the 80s.
Yeah.
My 80s girl.
Okay, so but I'll answer the question, but let me go back to the question Jim was asking about the relevant questions. Okay, so the control questions or comparison questions are what we call probable lies, which means there's two things in life everyone has done. Everyone has lied and everyone has stolen. Okay. And if someone tells me they've never stolen anything, they just did the other. They just lied. Whether or not it's an ink pen from an office or anything that you didn't ask permission for, it's still stealing, whether it's candy or whatever else as a child. All right. So they're probable lies. The control questions are related to or similar in nature to the actual issue question. For example, if it was a theft, my control question would be, before you were whatever age I put in there, do you remember? That's the key question. Do you remember ever stealing anything serious that you haven't been caught for? Okay. That would be the question for that. Then the next question would be like, before you were 25, do you remember ever lying to anyone in authority about something serious? And then the last control question pretty much would be, before you were 25, do you remember ever committing a serious crime that you haven't been caught for? Okay.
So if I was a lawyer who's committed a crime, that's why I hate when they say criminal lawyers, like, no, criminal defense lawyers. And you're taking my polygraph, and I'm like, I want it parsed down. I'd be like, I don't understand what you mean by authority. I don't understand what you mean by, do you start reformulating the questions on the spot?
No, I'll break it down. I can get simple with it. Like, have you ever lied to your parents about slipping out? They were in authority. Have you ever lied to a teacher or a professor?
Okay.
Have you ever lied to a boss man or someone in authority?
So you mentioned there are 9 questions. How long does the exam take?
All right. The examination, each chart, so if you take the 9 questions, you do it 20, 25 seconds. Each chart takes 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes or something like that. And so with the computerized polygraph, when we pull up the chart, it has a little red button, obviously, to start record button. And then there's a time bar on the software at the bottom. It starts going across and it shows you how much time it is. And when it gets all the way across, it resorts back to the beginning for the next question. Okay. So you take those 9 questions in 25 or so seconds or whatever, about 4 minutes. All right. After you get through recording the first chart, you hit the little red button to stop recording. And when you do that with the computerized polygraph, a little window comes up and says, that was a big window, but anyway, a little window comes up and says, do you wish to append another chart? Which means, do you wish to add another chart? And you just have 2 words there, yes and no. You can't exit the program unless you say one of those 2. All right. If it's the first chart and you exit the program, it's going to tell you that it did not have enough data to score the chart. So we never say no after the first one unless they omit something or want to stop and tell you something. But so then we hit the record button again. We do the same thing again. If that's all we need for 2 charts, then we say no at the end. And when we say no, after we recorded enough charts, automatically it scores the chart before I can go anywhere else. And it lets me know. Okay. And so,
so Johnny, you were talking about probable lies and then the relevant questions. And so the algorithms compare the reaction to the probable lie questions to the relevant questions, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why they're similar in nature. Now, another thing that's really important.
But you didn't answer Matt's question, which is like a person walks in the room, like what they sit
what's
down.
the technology is still what I'm curious about, especially when you are talking about how the system allows you to like go yes versus no. Like half the time I do Control P to print and my computer says there's no printer, even though there's a printer right next to my computer. How long have we been putting all this in the hands of the computerized technology?
Probably about 35 years, 40 years.
Okay. And is it still the kind of same setup that you see in the movies?
Like Meet the Fockers or something? No.
Sure.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No. I have never polygraphed anyone in the bathroom or anything like that. So basically, the polygraph actually, I think, started. I always tell people this, whether it's true or not. But I do know that it probably started in 1895 by a guy by the name of Cesar Lombroso, and I think it was called a hydrospigmograph. It dealt with water and things like that. And then there's been new technology, new inventions like Galvini came up with the GSR, the galvanic skin response. Benusi came up with the pneumotubes, things like that. But I always tell people, like, back in the caveman days, they had polygraph examiners. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, they had witch doctors. So if there was like somebody that was a theft in the tribe, they would get their suspects and they would have them tell them that they had to walk through this tunnel without lights, obviously. And it was real narrow. And there was a donkey in the middle of the tunnel that the only way you could get by was pull the donkey's tail for him to let you by. Okay. And if you were the one that stole the stuff, he's going to know it and he's going to kick you to death because you can't see it. Well, lo and behold, what they did was put charcoal on the donkey's tail and they checked your hands when you came out the other side to see you didn't pull the tail.
Wow.
Oh my God.
That's the kind of polygraph we need these days. No. But anyway, with the algorithms, okay, we'll go back to when the polygraph started coming out with the pen and paper, the charts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt, you can manipulate those charts because you can manually turn the little dial for the sensitivity to make it more sensitive to a reaction, okay, to whatever question you wanted. And I actually had a case for a court-martial case or something like that, the Citadel, where someone did take an exam and the examiner did do that. And I I noticed it right away. That's what he did. But you could do that. But with the old polygraphs with the pen and paper, basically we were taught that there were 22 criteria that the examiner would use to determine if someone was lying or telling the truth by looking at the paper chart, seeing the changes, the degree of changes, and things like that. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, with the computerized polygraph, there's over 200 criteria because you're dealing with a computer monitors broken down into thousands of pixels. And the software can tell the difference between 1 and 2 pixels, where we couldn't tell the difference between 1 and 100 without zooming in. So it's a lot more scientific now. So when I participated in gathering data for Johns Hopkins University, I was working at SLED, and the 3 guys underneath my supervision, we actually conducted real criminal cases and sent back on floppy disks to the scientists up there, and they took those charts and they did what they did as scientists and developed algorithms that actually score the chart now. So
I think go ahead.
So now get to Matt's question. What are you measuring? The polys. What are the different things are being graphed?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we've been dying to hear this.
For 27 minutes.
Okay. So,
it's an hour-long podcast. All right, we gotta build something.
Are you sure you're certified?
I'm pretty certified. Okay, so I'm gonna answer Jim's question just as if I was examining someone. Okay, and I'm gonna use you, Sarah, because you're easy to use like this. Okay.
How so?
Because you have a sense of humor from your email. Okay. All right. So I'm going to use Sarah. Okay. Sarah, I'm going to pretend, just like you said, you're a examinee or client, and you're getting ready to take a test from me.
And I'm a fucking liar. You're about to bust my ass.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is okay, Sarah, I'm going to go into detail with you about how a polygraph actually works.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Would it surprise you if I told you probably high 90% of all polygraph examiners don't even know how a polygraph works? Would that surprise you?
No, it wouldn't, because I've had 2 and I obviously wasn't really explained properly to me.
Well, do you know how I know that?
Yeah.
You know how I know that?
How?
Because I'm a smart fellow. Do you know how I know I'm a smart fellow?
Because you're certified.
I have a smartphone.
Oh, okay.
With a click of a button, I could take a picture of you and send it to my 2 daughters in Northern California, just like that. I can make magic happen. See how good I am?
Right.
And I'm a gourmet cook, too. I can go to Walmart and buy some pre-cooked Jimmy Dean turkey sausage, put it on a paper plate, put it in the microwave, hit 1, boom, it's done. Gourmet time. No, everything in life, the only thing we're concerned with is, can you learn how to do it? Are you a car mechanic? Sarah, are you a car mechanic?
No, of course not. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't know the first thing about it.
Okay, I'm sorry. So you don't know how to drive then, right?
No, I know how to drive.
Whoa, wait a minute. You know how to drive a car, but you don't know how it works? No. Everything's that way.
Right.
When you go to school, you take math. The only thing you're concerned with is, can you learn how to do the problems? Mm-hmm. When you get a job, the only thing you want to know is, can you do the job right? Can you learn how to do the job? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing when you go to polygraph school. Typically, when you go to polygraph school, the people that are teaching you aren't even polygraph examiners themselves. They're people with a lesson plan. That sounds weird, but it's not. Everything's that way. Do you think a 5th grade science teacher is a scientist? No. They're probably a PE coach that got stuck with a bunch of bratty 5th graders. The point is, when you get through with the polygraph course, you will know how to give the test. And that's all you have to know how to do, because it's computerized.
Right. Okay? So you're just operating, you're just essentially going through
going through the motions.
Yeah.
Going through the motion. And that's also where the questions come in, but being the most important, because basically no one can beat a polygraph. Navy SEALs, CIA, spies, things like that. And the main reason is because you can't beat yourself. Okay. So when I explain this to you, you're going to know what I'm talking about. All right. So what does a polygraph record? If you Google it, it's going to say blood pressure. Okay. And actually, just like that right there, blood pressure cuff, right? Go around your arm. Okay.
Mhm.
It's going to say blood pressure, heart rate changes, perspiration, nervousness, anxiety, all those things like that. Breathing. Okay. Pretty much all those things are lies.
Okay, but if you get a prolific liar who believes his or her own lies, like just everything is a lie, like does that
Yeah.
still affect those things?
No, yeah, we'll talk about this. Save that question till after I get through explaining this, and then we'll answer that one. So anyway, pretty much all those things are lies. I have never, ever recorded anyone's blood pressure because I need a stethoscope with a manual cuff. I don't have a stethoscope, and there's nothing digital built in like they have now. Okay.
Yeah.
So we do not record blood pressure. Plus, if I had to record someone's blood pressure every time I asked a question, possibly I would have to record the blood pressure maximum of 36 times. We'd be there all night. We don't record blood pressure. When you put the cuff on the arm, you actually only inflate it to about 75. To record your blood pressure, you need to pump it up to about 180 to 200 and let the air start coming out. So we do not record blood pressure. Another thing, we do not record changes in your heart rate. It does not tell me what your heart rate is. The only way I'm going to know what your heart rate is for me to manually count every stroke, cardiac stroke, in 60 seconds. Okay? But there's no point in it because whatever your heart rate is, once we start the test, it does not change. Whether you lie or tell the truth. This is easy to explain. It doesn't change because heart rate is measured by beats per minute, which is 60 seconds. These questions are asked every 20, 25 seconds, which basically means that I could ask you 3 questions in just a little bit over a minute. Nobody's heart speeds up for 20 seconds, settles back down for 20, speeds up for 20. It doesn't work that way. When your heart rate increases, it's normally caused by one or two things predominantly, either exercise or anxiety, right? So either one that causes your heart rate to increase, for it to settle back down to normal, it takes minutes of deep, slow, relaxed breathing. We don't have minutes. We have 20, 25 seconds. So basically what we found out with this cardio cuff, it's a cardio cuff that's recording your cardio pattern all the way across. I'll see your systolic stroke, your diastolic stroke, your amplitude of your heartbeat, the longitude, the baseline changes, top line changes, extrasystoles, all kind of AFib, anything like that. I'll see those. Okay. But basically what we found out is that the scientists said that if the person produces a blood volume increase, in other words, if your heart pumps out more blood during any 20, 25 seconds, it's 100% that you just lied. 100%. Okay, so my question is to the scientists was, how can your heart pump out more blood without beating faster? They explained it. It actually squeezes hard. Kind of like if you had a water bottle like this, you had a water bottle.
What if you have a heart condition that does that and it's completely unrelated to lying?
You do?
Your medical conditions don't come factor in?
No, so we're looking for timely increases. Okay. And everything we do is, that's why we ask the questions on multiple charts. We're trying to see if we get the same reactions on each location.
And it's always 9 questions.
No, it could be 10. I mean, some other people do other techniques like Sky or something like that with a suspect and know, did you, do you suspect, do you know, did you, things like that. You can do testing technique called a modified relevant question. And those are questions that you basically asking evidence connecting questions like, did you rob the TD bank? Do you know where any of the money is from the TD bank? Do you know where the gun is? Things like that. So, but the more you ask, the less chance you have of getting a good test.
Less chance you have of what?
Of getting a good test.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so Johnny, you're talking about heart rate is, all
Yeah.
these like blood pressure cuff. I mean, that's just all for show. I mean, so
Well,
is it
no,
like,
there's actually a really good purpose for it, because like with your heartbeat, you have the diachrotic notch, which is the valve that's letting blood out and then closing back to keep the blood from coming back. So that actually can move too under tracings. So we do use that. We're looking for that. But almost everybody I polygraph, even if they're on blood pressure medicine, the heart rate's going to be a little bit higher, or even vastly higher than it would be normally when they come in. Depending on that person, also depends on the case, their anxiety, fear, whatever else. So it could be up there. But yeah, we do use that. All right. Other things that we use now, we have the galvanic skin response with the two little electrodes that goes on your pointer finger and your ring finger. And they say what they're trying to tell you is that we measure sweat, perspiration with that. I'm going to tell you, if I had to measure people's sweat, that would be the nastiest job in the world. And I don't think, Sarah, you want me putting anything on you that I just came from prison measuring some of those people's sweat.
No.
Right? And also, think about this. I've never heard of a sweatnometer yet. I mean, it sounds like a cool thing to measure sweat. I just have no desire to invent that or try to do that. So basically what we do use the galvanic skin response, and that component is used for other things too. It's used for mental health testing too. So basically with that, we're trying to measure any kind of psychological changes your brain sends down your arm through your sweat glands on your fingertips to the sensory neurons in each fingertip. We have over 3,000 sensory neurons in each fingertip that stretches about 1/10 of an inch across the tip of our fingertips. Our fingertips and our lips have the most sensory neuron of any part of our body. So that's basically,
and our fingertips?
Yes, ma'am. Have the most sensory neurons of any part of our body. And that's what we're using with those electrodes. Okay. And so when we see that there's a psychological change, and that could be caused by, obviously, pictures coming in your mind about committing the offense that you're accused of, and we'll get into that a little bit too. So, but anyway, that's what we do with the galvanic skin response. Okay. With the two tubes, they're called pneumotubes. There's two of these. Okay.
Right.
All right. So with those, they're called pneumatic, which means air. One goes around the top of your chest and one goes around your abdomen. Okay. And with this right here it's called a motion sensor pad. They commonly refer to it as a countermeasure pad. You sit on that. All right. So with these components, I'm going to record any kind of movement, breathing, talking, sneezing, hiccups, coughing, laughing, sighing, yawning, giggling, nodding your head, shrugging your shoulders, flexing your muscles, wiggling your toes, tightening your butt muscles, anything you do that goes through your spine. Okay, guess what? Everything you do, pretty much everything you do goes through your spine, right? Your spine is your main supervisor of your body as far as sending and receiving messages, right? Okay. I mean, like if you have a stroke, one side of the body is paralyzed, you can't move. So people get hit on the football field, knocked out. First thing the medics check is fingertip movement, toe movement, feelings, things like that. Okay. So I have a question, Sarah. If your spine is your main supervisor of your body as far as sending and receiving messages, where does the spine get its orders from?
Where does what?
The spine get its orders from?
My brain?
Absolutely. See, this is another weird thing. Have you ever thought about yourself as being the brain? Sarah, you are the brain. Sarah, you are the brain. You are the big boss, the head honcho, the mastermind. All right, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't do or be anything in life but accept whatever you, the brain, wants you to, lets you, or make you. Am I right?
Well, I wish, but okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're all the brain, though. We're all the brain.
All right.
Okay.
I can accept that.
But we don't control the brain. Sarah, wave your hand. Wow. That was weird. Was that weird to you? Sara, was that weird?
Yeah, because you're having me do weird shit, and
No,
I don't even
Sara,
have, I don't even have the straps on and stuff. That would
Sara,
even be more
Sara.
weird shit.
No, I saw that hand. I looked straight at that hand on the screen here and told you to wave your hand, and you did. Does that hand have ears?
No,
Does it
it's
have
my
a brain?
telling the hand to do it.
Exactly, but I wouldn't talk to you. Talk to the hand because the ears are not listening. Remember?
Right, right.
Anyway, so what just happened was your brain just sent electrical and chemical messages through, and this is how the polygraph works.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain just sent electrical and chemical messages through over 100 billion neurons in your head. 100 billion. That's a lot. As a matter of fact, if you had to count to a billion, one at a time, each second, it would take you 3,100 years. Impossible to do. Yet, not only did you send the messages through those 100 billion neurons, you send them across bridges, across synapses, and you have over 100 trillion of those. You send them down to your spinal cord, and back throughout your body to tell your hand to wave. Hey, just like that. Actually, way faster than just like that. You just sent those messages at approximately 270 miles per hour. Wow. That's fine. Have you ever measured 270 miles per hour?
No.
I'm going to let you do it now. I'm going to ask you some real easy questions real fast and see how fast your brain works. These are easy. But don't worry. Jim and Matt's going to do the same thing, even though I'm not telling them to do it. They're going to do it. Okay? All right, ready? What is 2 plus 2?
4.
What's your mother's first name?
Faye.
What color vehicle did you come to work
Actually, I
in?
lied. She's dead. Is that a lie?
Well, that was a first name, though.
Oh, yeah, Faye. Uh-huh.
Okay. What color vehicle did you come to work today in?
Gray.
Right. All right. So, Sara, those 3 verbal responses that you just gave me, there are 2 major problems with them.
Why?
Because one, they weren't 270 miles per hour. I'm going to explain that to you. But the biggest problem is those weren't even the answers to the questions that I just asked you.
Well, I mean, I was going to say none of your business, but then
That's all right, but you didn't. You didn't. But so wait a minute now. So, Sara, you thought those were the answers to the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, let me explain. Here's what just happened. Your brain analyzed my questions basically before I was even through. A picture of the number 4 came in your brain. A picture of your mother's first name came in your brain, maybe her face. A picture of whatever type of vehicle you came to work in, the color gray, and even probably where you parked, it came in your brain, right?
Right.
Those pictures that came in your brain, those were the answers to the question. Now, what you did with those answers without even thinking, you sent messages through those 100 billion neurons across those 100 trillion bridges, down to your spine, your spinal cord, back up your neck, your throat, your vocal cord, your vocal box, your larynx, your jawbone, your lips, and your tongue, for you to make a sound. The sounds that you made were actually the result of having the pictures in your brain. If you'd not gotten any pictures in your brain, you wouldn't even know what kind of sound to make, right?
So if I lied about my car, like let's say my car is red or something, that would mess up those things, right?
No, actually, if a picture of gray came in your car and you tried to change it to red, that's called disassociation. And that's something that some people try to use as a countermeasure to beat the polygraph. But actually what you're doing, you're placing more emphasis on your car because you're taking the gray and changing it to red. And people try to do that, but actually you're causing a bigger reaction. So basically,
why are people, I mean, not what people, but why, polygraphs are considered unreliable and inadmissible. I mean, I know that Jim's probably, of all the attorneys I've known from coast to coast, Jim's probably the one that like actually ends up doing them every so often for some reason. But for us, it's like, we don't even talk about it. It's
law enforcement likes them here because it's a shortcut. I mean, that's
no, we don't. We just don't. I mean, I've had 2 in my entire career, both been in the context of rape cases. They have not been standalone. They have been just an added sort of layer to what I was presenting. And it's because the DA was agreeable to my examiner, who passed away, but he was, pretty renowned here, Jack DeMarco. And, and it does, that's not even the norm. So, why is there anywhere that it's admissible?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. Okay. And
Yeah.
why do you think you do this for a living? So obviously it's got value. So why, in your opinion, are people reluctant, or, why is the system so anti-polygraph? Because it's unreliable.
Probably by word of mouth. People say, "Oh, I took a polygraph and they said I lied and I didn't." So, or I know this person took a test and he beat the polygraph because he did do what they said he did, but the examiner said he didn't. But here's the thing about it. Why do law enforcement use it so much if it's not any good? Why does the federal government use it? Why does the CIA use it? FBI? Why do they use it if it's not any good?
Well, I'll tell you, Johnny, they use it to try to,
get a confession,
statement, a confession out of somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I honestly, when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we had a bank robbery case, and it was a accessory after the fact, and we had this defendant in there, and she said that she was not aware that the guy robbed a bank, and so she sits down for a polygraph, and the polygraph examiner says, "You flunked the test." I don't know if she did or didn't flunk the test, but then she changed her story and said, "Yeah, I did know, et cetera." And then she goes back and tells the lawyer, said, I told the guy that I knew because he said they were going to take my kids away from him, but I didn't really know. I mean, it's so easy to get someone to change their story when you, in the face of something, I just.
Absolutely. And so basically what that is a false confession. And just like you said, it's they're trying to intimidate you. I didn't allow that when I was in charge of the polygraph for SLED with my examiners. And also I tried to steer them away from doing a multi-issue question like the modified general question technique. I just wanted something specific.
Right. So, my biggest, Sarah, a lot of times, what they kick the lawyer out. So you have a client and, is going to sit for a polygraph. Well, that's the only time that law enforcement can interview my client without me present. And I don't like that, but that's just how they play.
But your client can refuse.
Yeah. But also, Jim, I know when I was doing it for law enforcement, if the attorney says, "Hey, I want to see the questions that you're going to ask," there should be no problem. And then you could say, "Okay, after the test, I don't want you talking with him. I don't want you answering them any questions." Then I couldn't as law enforcement because you'd already told me.
Wait, Jim, are you talking about a pre-arranged situation where you've agreed to your client doing polygraph for?
Yeah. So, here a lot of times in plea agreements, you've got to pass a polygraph to the satisfaction of the federal government. That's
right. Like Alec Murdoch's plea agreement.
Every federal plea agreement is like that. And Johnny, what you said, they changed the damn plea agreements in South Carolina because of what I used to do. I would say, "Hey, client, no matter what he says or she says you failed, don't say a word to him. Come out and talk to me." And then, we just walk off. But now under the federal plea agreements, and, they include passing it to the satisfaction that you have to, you can't just refuse to answer the post polygraph questions. That's the whole process.
Yeah.
And the only time they ever put your client on a polygraph is when they think your client is lying because he's not saying what
they want to hear,
believe to be the case.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a client going in and lying on another person to make the government's case against the other person, they never put them on the polygraph. Never put them on the polygraph.
Yeah, because they don't want to discredit the. They don't want to. They don't want to let it be perceived that they don't believe their witness or whatever.
Johnny, how much do you charge
for what?
Polygraph.
It depends on the case.
How much you charge to polygraph me?
To fly out there?
No,
No.
well,
If you
no, I'm
would,
not talking
okay,
about.
so
I'm not talking about flying out here and me helping you in Hollywood and stuff like that. I'm
no,
talking
well,
because
hey, listen, no,
that's a trade-off.
okay, I don't charge as much as other people because I do so much and I don't really need to and don't care about
Yeah.
that. I charge basically 500 to 550 for a
Oh.
polygraph exam here in Columbia.
Mhm.
If I have to drive a couple hours, let's say,
Right. Then you add to your travel time. But if Jim says to you, hey, you need to polygraph Sara, she's my client, but she's got to pass. She has to
no way,
pass.
no way. That's up. You, Sara, would be the most important person as far as helping me come up with the question. And it's your test.
Mm.
It's going to show whatever you show. Okay. I've been offered a lot of money to pass some people. I don't care about it. I mean, that's all it takes is one situation like that, and your career is gone forever.
Right.
So I
But
was
Johnny,
offered
yeah, let
So
me ask
you wouldn't
you
even do it for
this.
Jim Griffin. Forget it.
doesn't matter.
Let me ask you this because I had this come up once. I had a bunch of Russians from the state of Georgia who were on a ship and came into Charleston Harbor, and they thought that they were illegally dumping offshore, so they had a big investigation. And we had, and they wanted to do a polygraph on a couple of them that I was representing, and because they sent a State Department translator down, we had our own translator, and it was a question about whether the translation was accurate. So our translator was allowed to sit in the pre-interview, and that guy reported after the fact that the polygraph examiner gets in my client's face, like 2 inches away, accusatory, like, I know you're lying, and then puts him on a test to see if he reacts. I mean,
Absolutely not. You can't do that.
but that, right. But when the lawyer's kicked out of the room and no one's in there, I mean, I get that story all the time saying, you wouldn't believe that guy was playing games with me. He did this, that, and the other. And that is, I mean, isn't that a way to manipulate the results when the examiner?
Well,
Yeah.
more than likely, your examinee, your client is going to fail that test. Okay.
Yeah.
You do not polygraph anyone immediately after they have been interrogated or anything like that. You do not do it. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't, and that's another reason we review all the questions with the examinees before we start, because we want to make sure how they answer the questions and things like that. So we review those. We do not ask surprise questions, okay?
Right.
Because you will react to that. So basically what happens is every day our mind takes millions and millions of pictures and videos of things we see, say, do, touch, taste, hear, feel, okay, but we forget them. But if I ask you a question, if you know it, if you remember doing it or you know it, you cannot stop a picture from coming in your mind.
Right.
Okay. For instance, 3 plus 3, 6 came in both yours and Matt's mind. Okay. Red apple, yellow banana, zebra, pink elephant. All those pictures come in your mind. So basically what I'm trying to do with the question, I'm trying to see if you're lying about remembering doing something, not if you've done it.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, not if you're lying or telling the truth. I'm trying to see if you're lying about remembering doing it. And like I said, we forget everything we do. But if you do remember it, a picture or video comes in your mind. And if a picture or video comes in your mind, there are going to be details. All right. Depending on what that picture or video means to you, your well-being, safety, whatever else, determines where your brain sends messages to. And you can't stop it because you don't even know they're sending it.
So, Johnny, one other, I know we're about to wrap it up here, but every federal polygraph my clients have had to do in the last, ever, they pretend like they have a quality control and they have a second person review everything. And I mean, sometimes, like I did one in Raleigh a few years back, and the quality control guy was in South America somewhere. I mean, if it's all computer algorithms, is that just bullshit?
So I visit their quality control up in DC whenever we started doing that at SLED. when I was there, because we wrote the policy for polygraph procedures and everything like that. And so then I was put in charge, well, not put in charge, it was added to my responsibility, which I was already doing. I had to review every polygraph exam that was conducted by my examiners and sign off on it that I'd reviewed it. Okay. But those like that, with the federal government, for what I understand, unless they change, if you had someone do it in Raleigh or wherever else, and they were going to send the exams somewhere else, it's going to be a couple of weeks before they come back to confirm it. I know the GBI does that in Georgia. I know a couple of their examiners, when they do an exam, they have to send it off for the final verdict, so to speak. Which, why? If you're any good, it's a computerized, like you said. So it's going to tell you.
What are they doing?
Yeah, okay, I can understand that back in the day when it was paper and chart and stuff like that.
And now
it's computerized. I have no idea how those algorithms work. I'm not that smart, and neither is law enforcement like that. So I mean, I don't understand that. And the mischief that takes place is in the room before they plug the guy up to the machine, in my opinion. But
no.
Yeah.
So I can't hear you guys.
You there, Johnny?
We're here.
All right. Yeah.
It's like a moment of. I don't think we've ever had that.
Well, I wanted to ask one more question, but I did also. Yeah. I know we're already running a little long here, and it's actually more of a personal question for Johnny. You spent your entire life, reading people on a lie detector, and I just wonder, does that spill into your personal life at all? Do you find yourself being a sort of human lie detector when you interact with people in your daily life?
Without a doubt.
So then the larger question, this is like a philosophical question, but do you feel like people are generally very truthful, or is your bullshit meter going off all the time?
Well, that's a hard question to answer, because depends on when you're saying people are generally truthful or lying. It depends on what you ask them and stuff like that. But see, I tell everyone that I'm Pathy. I can read minds. Like Matt, right now I'm reading your mind. You want me to tell you what you're thinking?
Yes.
That I'm full of shit.
I was actually just thinking about the zebra and the pink elephant. I'm still cycling through all these trigger words, but keep going.
No, but so a lot of times I do not even need the polygraph at all to tell. A lot of times I know that they're going to admit to me before I ever even get to the questions. It happens a lot of times.
Okay, I need you here in LA.
Yeah. Johnny's he's a great party guest. He'll bring his polygraph. Everyone sit around.
Amazing. I need you.
Okay, I'm ready.
After the holidays. So when are you coming down? You have a family here, right?
In San Francisco, not San Francisco, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol.
Yeah.
But I am coming up. Yeah, I'm coming back in March. I just left there for Thanksgiving. I'm coming back in March. But I think we're going down to San Diego or somewhere for the Lego factory or whatever.
Yeah. Legoland.
That's Legoland.
Legoland. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
So if Jim has our mugs, I don't know how many he has left. There's a couple of people that are on the list for them.
Yeah, no, Johnny gets some.
Johnny gets a mug. If not, we're going to order more. It's like this.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, you have to look at our mugs on the mug.
I love it.
You definitely earn a mug.
I love it.
And speaking of watching the show, hey, you can check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@thepresumption. If you're not already subscribed, please do. We're on all the podcast platforms. Oh, I wasn't talking to you, Johnny. I was talking to our listeners. But hey, if you want to subscribe, great.
I will too. I'm a listener now. I'm a listener.
All right. Love it. And yeah, I don't know. Jim, Sarah, anything else you guys want to say before we wrap it all up?
We really appreciate you coming on, Johnny.
Johnny, you're amazing.
Informative and entertaining, no question about it.
I mean, really amazing. I really appreciate you. And until next week, Jimmy, we
rest.